wiggy diggy, wiggy diggy, wiggy diggy. Bum 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 people. There. Okay, everything's up. We're good. All right. Yay, good morning. How are you?
All right, 40 seconds, guys.
I'm doing well.
40 seconds. Hi, chat room. Hello. I see you guys. Be with you in just one moment. We'll be up on the air in 40, 37, 36, 35 seconds, 34, something along those lines.
10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Stop.
Hammer time. Sorry. It's either that or In the Name of Love, and yeah. I think the funny thing you should go is stop in the name of love. Right. So anyway, crossing my genres.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubble.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, Johnny Million, I want to congratulate you on your role in the new Trump administration as a member of Doge, as a member of Doggy, the the Department of Governmental Evildoers that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have put together. I have to say, there are few things that I agree with in principle, sort of always, like getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending and modernizing stuff. I'm always for that. That sounds like a good idea. Sounds like, if it's what it says on the tin, relatively, nothing wrong with that at all. Couple of things right out of the gate, though. For those of you that have been listening to this story carry on over the last little bit of the Doge meme that Elon Musk has put forward, this Department of Governmental Efficiency that he's going to use to cut the fraud and waste and the extra money and the money that is not allocated by the government and will automatically be, this is Vivek Ramaswamy's take on it, is first and foremost, it is not Doge, it is COGE. COGE. It is a committee on government efficiency. It is not a department. I've said this from the minute they named it. You can call it your little pretend name all you want to, but that does not make it a legitimate entity. The other thing is can we address one of the biggest, most ridiculous lies of that kind of slides by unnoticed by most people, by the way.
Yes, please. Let's do it now for the first time.
Under Trump, which is this idea that he cut more regulations than anybody ever. Okay, there was this, you've heard them that we cut more regulations than anybody else in our administration and whatever. Okay, so I went on a bit of a hunt to find out, how do we know what regulations they actually cut? Right? I mean, you would think it's just kind of, it's like bureaucratic red tape in a book and they just redlined a bunch of them that no longer count. Okay. Well, it should come as no surprise that, like a department, regulations, which require funding, that might be the big tip-off, that require funding to actually enforce, are authorized by the Congress as a part of all legislation. And so to remove those things, they have two paths. One, you can undo the actual initial legislation itself. You can get rid of that. You can repeal the Overregulation Act of 1875, right? You can, and in kicking out whatever the, well, here's a great example. The ACA. One of the elements of it that could be considered a regulation, sort of, for the sake of this argument, is the individual mandate, that it requires everybody to have insurance. You must have it, and you got to get it from someplace, and it's got to have certain standards. Like, that would be a regulation. A regulation says this has to meet certain standards, okay? Now, did the Trump administration get rid of that? Did they redline it? Did they drop it? No. They filed a lawsuit, and they won in the Supreme Court eventually. That's the other method by which you get rid of regulations. Now, the House and the Senate can get rid of regulations in new legislation, and they do all the time. So in the density of most bills, when you read them, and if you don't read them, I do, you will often see these little like ride-on attachments, or even in the amendments, the Appropriations Committee or the Judicial Committee or whoever's, primarily looking at this piece of legislation as it moves through, they will mark it up and they will add a chunk in there that this section will now be the law going forward, and these rules and regulations will no longer be necessary, and therefore they will be removed from the legal language around this topic or this idea, and we will now refer to the new laws, regulations, or lack thereof. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's there are two ways. One, you can repeal or replace in the legislative process, or you can file a lawsuit and have the regulation seen as in violation of the Commerce Clause or something along those lines, or use some constitutional argument for why the regulation shouldn't have existed in the first place. Now, that used to work a lot easier when the regulations were drafted in the 1920s. But as we've gotten, further along, one of the reasons why there's so many regulations and why you haven't been able to do it, kick it to the curb except through legislation, and Republicans do nothing but stall legislation. That's their primary goal most of the time. Is that in that legislation that they're stalling constantly is the removal of those regulations and replacing them with something that's actually more modern or up to date or has something to do with the kind of asphalt we use now versus the asphalt they were making in the 20s, and the flammability of tires and all that kind of stuff, and whether or not kids' pajamas should have, should be 50% asbestos or whatever. You're right. So the old ones, which is a terrible regulation, and I was glad it was struck down by Richard Milhouse Nixon. Anyways, I'm kidding. But the point being is that there are those two primary paths. Does that sound like to anyone that the White House just comes in and starts flicking away regulations and making them disappear? No.
He pretends that everything can be done with an executive order and that he doesn't need any help.
Right. Now, there are some regulations you can get rid of that way. You can do an executive order on them, and they sort of wither on the vine, or they become deregulated because people ignore them going forward. They just stop paying attention to that regulation because it doesn't apply to anything, and it just sits on the books, which is very dangerous, because then you have Comstock Act kind of stuff, or the Alien and Sedition Act, which, when it was initially put forward, was originally found that parts of it were unconstitutional. They deregulated the Comstock Act and got rid of elements of it, mostly having to do with obscenity. Because, it's in the eye of the beholder, so you can't tell when you mail a package whether it'll be obscene by the time it arrives. And it was, a boy can dream, can he? So, yeah, but the rest of it stays on the books because it takes an act of Congress to repeal the law and pass it, and whoever's in the executive branch at the time can sign the passage of the new act that nullifies the old act. Right? We have oddly enough, government built for and by grown-ups, even if the toddlers show up and they get really mad. Trump got very angry about what he was allowed to do and what he wasn't allowed to do. And there was they take it down. I don't know why, but there's this regulation watch board, and they put up a regulation count, almost like the national debt, how many regulations we have. They're very anti-regulation. So they post this thing about how many have been taken down and how many new regulations have been put on, because every law that you make comes with regulations. Otherwise, you would not be able to regulate the law. You would basically, it wouldn't even be a law. It would be a commandment, if that makes sense.
Right.
You would just, right there.
It's almost as if you would dictate what the law might be.
Yeah, exactly. And to the extent at which it can be acted upon, right? The limits of the law are the regulation as well. This is the standard by which we know it's been broken. Yeah, right. And so I'm speaking directly to the maggots and trolls in the audience, and that might be cozied up next to their radios out there, that the more freedoms you have, the more regulations you're going to need. Because in a dictatorial circumstance where you can just say something and there's no variance in it, there's no options, it's just strict law. You can say thou shalt not kill and be done with it. And anybody who's caught killing gets killed in a fit of irony, or buried up to their neck in sand and their head covered in honey near an anthill, or whatever the punishment is for the absolutely crazy tribe we're talking about. So, but if you have freedoms in this country to say, kill someone in self-defense, or we differentiate the difference between killing someone because you chose to kill them and planned to kill them, or killing someone because in a spontaneous moment of, you were in a fight and you killed them, and you were both equally fighting, but both of you thought your lives were in danger at an equal amount, and one of them died. That would be manslaughter. All those secondary things about killing are, and maggots insist on this, especially when it comes to carrying a gun and being the good guy with a gun, right? We regulate thou shalt not kill into thou shalt not kill except in self-defense. And there are certain circumstances where the punishment is more egregious for killing, and there's some where you can argue that it was, it was accidental but a wanton, disregard for human life, or you were responsible for it even though somebody died and you were physically present. You were responsible for poisoning the water, and you didn't intend at that time to kill anybody, but you poisoned the water and people died anyways, and you are responsible for that.
You're feeling very attacked in this most recent segment here.
Well, I was going to bring this up at the tail end of this conversation, Johnny Million, because you're a killer. And you must
You
be
might be
stopped.
wondering why I'm discussing all of these things.
Yes, you might wonder why I'm bringing it up, because Johnny Million is a killer, and he must be stopped. Yeah, but that's crucial. What I'm telling you is, and this is never going to change, kids, the more freedoms you have, the more specific and voluminous the regulations are going to be. You're going to need a lot of little regulations to parse out how much freedom you have within the confines of any particular law. If it's overly dictatorial, you don't have any freedoms at all. They just go, sorry, that's rule. That's the rule. You're in violation. There's no but Your Honor. The more but Your Honors that you have in these situations, the more freedoms you have to act in your life. Otherwise, the government could pass the 10 Commandments, and that would be that, and then everybody'd be just stoned to death by an act of the state, which I think we're still against. Fairly certain. We'll be right back after this. We needed to kind of start the conversation so that we're all on the same page about reality and what the Trump administration is actually up against and why they get so angry when they actually have to do the job.
I was rocking.
I insist. Whew. Does that clear to everybody? Like, I don't think people grasp just how, like, the more variability you have in something where you got to pass a law against murder, obviously, right? But you can also go, well,
society is a series of agreements and compromises.
Yeah, exactly. And those compromises take place in legislation as regulations. Here's the limit. Here's the line.
People who want to get away with evil shit do not like regulations.
That's right.
They hate consequences.
And yet, at the same time, Donald Trump and his pals all like it when the language is very hardline, because then you can go, well, you didn't exactly say, what does shall mean? Thou shalt not kill, but I willed to do it, and therefore he did the killing. I just willed him to do it. So I didn't shall the murder. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't shall the murder. He shall the murder. I just hired him to do it. I wilt the murder. And therefore, I'm not guilty at all. Right? That would be the way they would do it. And that's where you get manslaughter and depraved indifference and all that kind of stuff. I willed it to happen, but I did not carry it out. And so shall means the material use of it. This is an oversimplification, but that's why. By the way, we are not on Shitter for the first time since we started.
Yay!
Being able to do that, and my account is fully deactivated.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, I've got to say that one of my favorite titles for an article about all this stuff and about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's little cog, the cog in the wheel, the koji, the what's the little thing, like the thing that keeps your beer cold?
Koozie.
Koozie, yeah, it's close enough. The salon title of this article is Experts. This is what they go. Doge scheme doomed because of Musk and Ramaswamy's meme-level understanding of spending. Which is absolutely true.
What are we going to do? Just make proclamations about things?
Well, first of all, they can't. Obviously, the Congress is in charge of the purse strings. This is what we find out. Now, one of the primary things
you and I
is
have just as much power as they do.
Right. Except here's what they plan on doing, and this is the scheme as we know it, is that Trump is going to put people in office, either in cabinet positions or in the actual departments themselves, that'll be basically like moles for Coge, where they will carry out whatever the other person, whatever the committee says. So it'll be kind of on autopilot, so that the whatever they come up with, they'll tell them, hey, cut this, and that person who's in office at that thing will. But they can only do that in the discretionary sense because it is by an order of Congress that they fulfill their obligations, as a cabinet position. They have to do the job they're there to do. And they have some wiggle room in the budget that is it's tens of billions of dollars of wiggle room in the administrative branch that they can mess with in terms of funding. They have in almost every big appropriation, what you'll find is they give the White House some appropriation-free money, like a little slush fund for prioritizing within the category of the thing. We know it's going to cost $5 trillion to do this thing over the next 10 years. So there's $5.1 trillion in there. And $100 billion is for over the next 10 years, whoever is in the administration can use or not use those monies to further that goal or not. But the rest of it is allocated, period, unless you change the law. So, again, even some of the regulations that they're talking about that are in the American Rescue Package or the infrastructure bill or those kind of things, which have the standards for gas-powered engines and how much carbon they put out and that kind of stuff, and like raising efficiency that everybody says is an electric car mandate, because at a certain point you peg the needle on the amount of pollutants you can take out of the stuff, the gusts that are coming out of an engine, all the crap that's in there. You can only remove so much of it and still have a functioning engine is the essential idea. So they automatically, by setting the standard so high, they make it so that we have to have electric cars. Instead of saying everybody must have an electric car, right, they set a standard for the emissions. And that is what Trump is wanting to repeal, for example. Well, the issue that they have is that all over the world, in the rest of the car market outside the United States, the standards are the same, if not higher. So if American auto manufacturers want to sell a car in the next 10 years anywhere but the United States, they've got to meet the standards of those other countries. Now, could they dump them in Africa and South America? Sure. Could Chevrolet be looking at the market in South America and go, nobody cares down there. Nobody's keeping track. So we'll just sell trucks down there. In theory, sure. Are they going to? No, because their market is for modern trucks. They're not just selling, leftover stock from the 1950s. They themselves, the customer, their primary customer, the U.S. customer, has been looking, especially when it comes to the pickup market, for increasingly refined experiences. I mean, the irony that big hick pickup trucks are like luxury vehicles is hilarious. I mean, the dashboards in them, the available amenities. Yes, they do indeed. They're very expensive and very shiny. They're the horse of new country music, spelled with an NU. And right. And so if he wants to repeal what he believes is the electric car mandate, he's just going to repeal the standard by which these car companies have to keep up with clean air standards. Well, you still got to sell them to states like California, New York, Illinois, even Texas and Florida, smog check now. So this idea that they're just going to drop all of the regulations and we're going to have like diesel trucks and you can just those guys who put like a throttle on there so that they can blow smoke out of the back of their car on purpose.
I call it a kazoo.
Yeah. Those guys, what they want is like, America should be able to do that until the roads are just filled with black smoke again. And we go through this again. We've been here before. One of the problems I have with rolling back stuff, besides the fact that you have to replace it with something modern, this is the only way going forward you're going to do this, kids. This is the only way going forward that in a modern society with the even baseline expectation of livelihood and life in the United States that we have come to expect. The only way you're going to get rid of a bunch of these regulations is to up-regulate them to more modern standards. What's available, what's possible, and the standard that consumers ultimately want. And I don't know how to tell Trump world this, but nobody wants cars with black smoke coming out of the tailpipe ever again. And very few people actually even want a tailpipe. So right. The problem with Ramaswamy and Musk and those guys coming in, and they're going to gut regulations along with Trump, and we'll get to the spending cuts in a second, is like the repeal of Roe, nobody really wants it. And the issue that we have in this situation is they're going to, he's obviously, when it comes to the electric car mandate, one of the things, which is not a mandate, but whatever, that the incentivizing of buying electric cars has been there since Obama. Again, we wouldn't even have Tesla if it wasn't for Barack Obama. Obama insisted that there would be funding for electric car companies when in the rescue package in 2009, because we weren't going to just rescue the big three, which Donald Trump believed at the time should sink and still does, I guess, on some level. They should just be allowed to fail because they're behind the times and they make crap or whatever he said. And he doesn't drive a car anyway, so who cares? But that there must be money in there for electric car companies. And Tesla was the single biggest beneficiary of it because they were further ahead, because Elon Musk had bought Tesla as a company outright and was pretending to run it. As he does right now. So, and again, yes, it's a tax credit, but the idea is that, that is revenue that's not coming into the government. That is another piece of the legislation that's part of it. That's where tax credits get written. Do you think the White House has the ability to give away tax credits? No. It's just like cutting taxes. They have to go through the Congress. So, The quote from the senior director of budget policy at the Center for American Progress, Bobby Kogan, says of Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they have a fundamentally superficial understanding of what they're doing. They have a meme level understanding. Let's get rid of unauthorized spending is sort of the thing you might see in a Facebook meme. And they would have to eliminate the programs outright through the Congress to do the cuts they're talking about. And that means cutting stuff in red states, which we will get to in just a moment. You're watching and listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more. Johnny Million. He's got a live stream, It's called It's Johnny Million on Twitch and YouTube. It's really cool.
And YouTube.
You should check it out.
And I also try to post the link in Blue Sky once we get rolling.
Oh, that's nice.
You can watch it through there.
Look at that. You're very smart. I'm going to take back some of the things I said about you. You've earned it.
I appreciate that.
We'll be
Somebody
back
in
right
the
after.
chat told me to do that last week, and I agreed.
It's very wise. We'll be back. Let's see. Copy. There we go. Oh, yeah, I've got to find that.
Back in 60.
Thank you, sir. Okay, where is this?
Yeah,
10 seconds.
Thank you.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, along the same lines of Trump's complete misunderstanding, even though he's already been president once, of how stuff actually works, and the the circumstances by which he is. I mean, granted, they have the House and the Senate, but in a lot of these cases, one of the things that Biden was very smart in doing was, if you'll recall, there was a mixture when these bills were being passed of understanding that he was getting bipartisan stuff passed. And so there were some giveaways and some stuff that focused on red states in each of these bills specifically. Were it the electric car battery plant that is in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. The expanse of, Arizona itself is the new Taiwan, probably sometime in the next year and a half, 2 years, because there will be, at my count, 6 chip fabs there in Arizona alone. Because chip fabs require a lot of water, and Arizona. Anyways, but yeah, but they have the workforce because of Arizona, just because they had the one fab there already, they can expand off that. It makes sense. But in each of these bills was a bunch of stuff that benefits red states specifically. And some people were even, kind of jawing about it. It almost favors them more than the blue states. Well, this is precisely why undoing the American Rescue Act and the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act will be near impossible by Donald Trump. A lot of that stuff is going to stay in place, or it is going to choke off the newfound growth in these red districts and red states. And the House knows it. And the Senate really knows it, because a senator is a statewide office, and they're the ones who deal with all of it. You can have your little red district outside Austin like Chip Roy and not really care. I mean, you should, but right. That doesn't mean they have to. It's really about getting reelected yourself. You should care about your other local Congress people that are, especially the ones that are in your own party. But it's not a requisite with a bunch of these folks. It's not necessary. It's, and a lot of these guys like Chip Roy and others in Texas are so self-aggrandizing and only seem to care about themselves and their own political future that they would arguably sink their fellow Republicans, even if they were fellow maggots in those districts, if it meant, reinforcing or burnishing their credentials with their voters as regulation or law cutters or what have you. So, the other big thing that Trump is so Koj is coming in. They're going to cut this, I suppose, they're going to make ginormous cuts in everything. They're going to cut all these. I think the phrase was, Ramaswamy says they're going to take a chainsaw to the federal bureaucracy and costs, which again, meme level understanding of how this stuff works. And that Ramaswamy keeps suggesting they could eliminate programs that have lapsed spending authorizations despite still being funded by Congress, which, by the way, would include veterans health care services, housing assistance, and the Justice Department. But again, not only did they completely misunderstand how that stuff works, is that just because they haven't re-upped the funding, they appropriate funds for it in a myriad of bills. In some cases, the stuff they think that's going to be the easiest to cut is actually funded in a bunch of different things. It's like they put these little cabooses on the end of other bills to continue the appropriations that go to these programs instead of the big Department of Justice bill every year. They go, oh, the Department of Justice needs this, we'll add this to the budget, we'll add this to this bill that's coming through. And so they amend these things just to get them passed because they know they will, and most of the time nobody cares. They attach them to other stuff because of the timely nature of bills that are going through the process and the limited time that they have to do it. So if you want to undo those things, you'd have to undo them in a myriad of bills. You couldn't even go to court and attack one bill. You'd have to go to court and attack all of them on the same principle and lose again, which brings me to, what was Donald Trump's success rate on getting rid of the regulations he said he cut? They said, according to Donald Trump, they cut, his White House anyways, they cut $194 billion worth of regulations from the budget, from the expenditures and just the existence, whatever, in the first term. In reality, they attacked what they said was a series of regulations that they said cost the American taxpayer or businesses $194 billion. It's sort of a made-up number. And then, in that process of attacking all of those, which he claims they succeeded, they got got rid of more regulations than any president in history. What do you think his success rate was on the ones that they took to court, for example, which was the primary way that the administration went after those things? Because they didn't repeal the ACA.
I don't remember him winning a ton of court cases.
22%. 22% of the cases they brought, they were successful. Most of those being perfunctory. Most of those being the kind where, oh, we want to get rid of this, so they go file something, and then somebody stands there and goes, Judge, we're here today because and then literally the administration's lawyer is standing across from the government lawyer who represents the legislation on behalf of the people, and they basically go, we have no objection, Your Honor, and then they go away. It's like dismissing the charges against stuff. And that's what I mean. It's like there's that kind of work that a president has to do all the time. If you ever see a situation where they show the president at work, if they're not taking a break from work, they're just signing things. And that includes briefs that go to the court that say, we want to get rid of this regulation. And then the government will either fight back against that or it won't. And the Obama administration was fantastic at it because they went through the process first. They went and said, okay, can we get rid of this one? If we, will we have to get it replaced? If we get rid of this, will it trigger anything else? No, probably not. Okay, so let's just get rid of this one. And so they'll go and file the thing, and the lawyers would march down to the courthouse and file this thing, and they set a hearing for tomorrow morning, and they come in and they go, we don't oppose this, and it's so ordered, and then it's done. That regulation is gone. And it happens all day, every day. Okay? By the way, one of our people in there says, no tax on Social Security seems like a good thing, though. I agree, but the way they're going to do it is they're going to lower how much Social Security you get because it will blow a hole in the budget because that's somewhere in the order of like 13% of revenue is Social Security. And so they would zero out, they would just take that money away before you get it. So let's say you're getting $800 and you're being taxed $100 on it every week over the course of the year. What they'll just do is lower your Social Security to $700. That kind of thing. Or actually $650 and hope you don't notice because it's a generalized number. So that's again, more than likely that's how they're going to do it. So how'd you ever work for the city of Lakewood at Boyer Park? No, I don't know what that means. But the point being is that they have no idea. They said they're going to target $500 billion in annual federal expenditures that are authorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended in an effort to end federal overspending. That's what they're talking about. Because they think they watched Dave over the weekend and think they can be Charles Grodin, and it's that simple. Wow. And by the way, can I say, yeah, in Dave, if you'll recall, they were trying to cut like I want to say like $25 million out of the budget for homeless stuff. They wanted to, move it back. They were going to lose this one thing from the budget because it was $25 million. And they could, it's just hilariously small, compared to whatever, like a state could write that check.
What the real numbers are. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, but the notion that spending is not approved by Congress or is used outside of how the legislative body intends is inaccurate, said David Reich, a senior fellow at the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. The Constitution requires Congress to authorize any and all government spending, which it does through funding bills or appropriations. For anything the federal government is spending, there's going to be an appropriation. It could be an annual appropriation. It could be an appropriation in authorizing law, which is what I was talking about before, where the funding and the regulations are built into the law itself. But Congress will have authorized that expenditure, and they will further it either in a CR or in the budget every year. And so the idea that they're going to come in and go, this money's just been sitting in an account. Nobody ever touches it. Nobody even knows what it does anymore, is ridiculous. It's childish. It's stupid. And what it means is that means they only see the part of the news they only watch congressional stories on the news that make it to make it to social media or make it to the front page of the, as far as like committees on Hunter Biden or something like that. The rest of government is really boring. And so they don't know any of this stuff because it's really boring. And I don't believe in boredom, so I don't have that problem. So I can watch boring stuff, according to other people, and go, oh, that's how something works. That's fascinating. So in their op-ed, Musk and Ramaswamy point to $535 million allocated to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, $1.5 billion for grants to international organizations, $300 million allocated to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood as examples of excess spending that could be cut, appearing to cite figures from the Congressional Budget Office on programs with unauthorized funds. But Kent Smetters, the faculty director at the Wharton Budget Model and University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with in the White House, told Salon that these unauthorized funds don't inherently amount to wasteful or excess spending either. In practice, unauthorized funds give a federal agency more flexibility to direct funds towards the needs that the agency sees as a higher priority at any point in time, which is what I'm talking about. This is the same slush money that every White House gets when they come in, so Congress doesn't have to fight with the White House about every nickel and dime. They can give them a little bit to, hey, is this important to you? Cool. If it isn't, you don't have to spend it. You can just leave it. And it will go into the, it will either generate interest in an account that it's in, or it will be rescinded in the, in the current year because it's unspent. And almost nobody, it should come as no surprise, comes into the White House and doesn't spend that money on a prioritization of theirs. Right. That's administration. That's right. Central scrutinizer in our chat room. That's administration. That's what an administration does. They administer the law and the budgetary outlay, and they administer the regulations, and they administer and that's the part that Trump hates. Remember all the pictures of him signing blank pieces of paper when he was in Walter Reed? When he was just, he had But yeah, when he was sick at Walter Reed, they made him look busy, and he looked all ragged, and he was just signing.
Oh, when he
pieces
was
of
all
paper.
COVIDed out.
Yeah, and you could see that the paper was blank. Interestingly enough, the fake work they were having him do, they just automatically went, what do I do all day? What's my thing I do all day? I sign these things. They put these things on my desk, and I have to sign these pieces of paper, right? Even the little ceremonies he'd have, where he was like a toddler who was like showing his little toilet to everybody. He would sign pieces of legislation, the parts that they liked, the stuff they wanted to draw attention to. They would put in a binder, have a bunch of show up and clap like harbor seals, and he would show it around like, "Dad, I'm a stinky," right? And that was like his fun for the day. But let me tell you something. Right after that,
Those made for some pretty great memes, though.
They were, yeah.
They were just so giant.
Oh, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse because he doesn't even care or know now. His brain is on such a hard fade. But you know what he did after that little clap signing thing that he did, whatever? He went back into the Oval and did it again. He just sat there all day, getting writer's cramp, just filling out these things because they need the actual signature of the President of the United States, not a stamp. You can't have a stamp. You can do it for dollar bills and stuff like that are, that the Fed puts out. But you can't, it's got to have his signature. So anyways, we got to take a break. I went blast past that break. We'll be back right in a second. And Philip Itttner will be joining us after the top of the hour. And I don't know if he's still in Poland or if he's made his way back to, or if he's in Lviv yet. We'll find out when he gets there. But he's transiting back to Ukraine. Obviously, a lot going on there. And I'll save it for when he's on the air. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Yeah. So programs without separate spending authorization amount to more than $516 billion of the budget, with the 10 largest programs comprising about $380 billion. Healthcare for veterans was the largest amount of unauthorized government spending, coming to $119.1 billion. Funding for other programs like housing assistance. Right. You authorize, ain't you? You musicians. I'm with you. I'm there. Did I ever show you my, did you ever see my Spinal Tap hoodie?
I don't know.
Oh, hold on. It's right out here. You're going to be very impressed. Because, it's not that weird to have.
A jog. We don't have time for that.
It's not.
Oh, that's nice.
It's pretty nice. But the best part is the back.
Shark sandwich. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I've had this for years. There's a whole story about me leaving in more clothing than I showed up in. But it was a gift.
And that's out of character.
Yes, that's true. It was a spontaneous gift, as it were.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, what can Koj actually do? Well, can they recommend to the White House things that should be cut? Sure. Then what happens?
Yeah.
The White House can recommend to the House and the Senate things that they think should be cut. That's how it works. This is called lobbying, kids. The Koj is just a lobbying group, and every president has a group that comes in and reprioritizes all their stuff and takes priorities away from whoever the last president was in the discretionary funds that they have. Now, in the programs without separate spending authorization, they amount to about $516 billion of the budget, okay? Of the 3 trillion budget that the federal government runs yearly. Now, again, the United States GDP is somewhere in the order of $26 trillion. So when people are like, we're going into debt with these things and we pay so much of the interest, and so we pay like 50% of what we pay is interest. No, it isn't. 20% of it is allocated to different kinds of interest, some of them rolling, some of them long-term, and a lot of it is just money borrowed from Social Security. It's money we owe ourselves. It's like these people who keep saying, China, we owe all this money to China money. China owns our debt. China at its height had 8% of the bonds that were for sale. They bought them because they were worthwhile. They have cashed a bunch of them in, and the Treasury Department has bought those back in large part during the Biden administration because China needs the money. They need the cash. So they sold them. And the Treasury Department either puts them on a shelf and never sells them again until they basically evaporate from their balance sheet, or they sell them to somebody else. So of the 10 largest programs that are quote unquote unauthorized in the way that these guys describe it, the single biggest one is veterans health care. It is 119 billion of that 516. Funding for other programs like housing assistance under the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998, and government entities like the State Department, Justice Department would in theory be on the chopping block per this thing. Now, they are departments though, and to get rid of a department, you would have to pass the elimination of that department through the House and the Senate. Now, could a maggot-friendly House with a narrow margin pass a thing that defunds and gets rid of the Justice Department? Could it pass? Probably not. But let's say it did. Let's say by a 2-vote margin, they pass it through the House. Does anybody think that the House, that the Senate that put John Thune in charge, as opposed to Trump and Elon Musk's pick, Rick Scott, would pass the elimination of the Justice Department or the State Department for that matter? Of course not. And again, we're back to a situation where they're basically just, this is noise. So, as an out-of-government entity, which it is not a governmental entity. There's no, they don't get a paycheck. They can hire all the people they want, but they're basically starting a lobbying firm. This is a doorstep lobby firm. That's what the COJ is. Congress will decide whether authorized or unauthorized programs get funding, and is not up to the discretion of the White House.
So what do they do? Just start going out on X and tweeting all of their wish lists?
Well, I think what they'll probably end up doing is they will try to torment federal employees into cowing to their demands. The problem is, like, by quitting or whatever, like they'll drive a bunch of people out of the workforce because it's just uncomfortable or something, until one of them sues for hostile workplace because the White House isn't protecting them from attacks from places on Twitter, or they sue Elon Musk and the president, and they settle for an unnamed sum, but people assume it's a lot of money, and then everybody goes, oh, I can do that too, and then it becomes a torrent, and they go, you know what, maybe we should back off a little bit. That's nothing. And I would suggest anybody who, obviously Musk is the deep pockets, if you're ever going to do something like that, go after Ramaswamy first, because he can't afford it, and Musk won't help him. That if you want to make this the mess they want it to be, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Now, that said, 2/3 of federal spending is mandatory, while the remaining discretionary spending largely goes towards defense. 70% of the nation's non-interest spending is public effects to Americans, like Social Security, SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, Medicare. And by definition, if you're cutting those, you're cutting aid to people. And now, does anybody want to hedge a guess at all which states per capita require more Medicare and Medicaid and SNAP benefits and WIC and all that? But red state to blue state.
We all know.
Everybody knows.
All the states that voted against their own interests.
Exactly. And here's what here's what needs to be pushed, I guess, is that let's just call it Operation Blue Sky. Think of the red states as Twitter. and that there were Democrats living in those states who were like hanging on, and maybe it'll turn around, and maybe. Folks, come on over to California. Come on over to the blue states. Move to Washington State. Move to Oregon. Move to Illinois. Move to New York. Time to go. Pack your stuff and get on the road, because at this point, what's going to happen is you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of people who don't realize or didn't realize or didn't want to say, didn't want to admit that they rely on government assistance to exist. And the minute it's cut, their squealing will become so loud as to make the area unlivable. Also, if there's purple states, I guess that would be another thing. Yeah, so Ranger Guzman says move to New Mexico. I agree. Go to the purple states. That'd be a good place to go, because you'll still have some, your Congress people there will not be against those cuts, and they will make up for it because the government of that state will probably care more about their people. A lot of these things, if they're carried out the way they say they're going to carry them out, with this brutal, kind of crayons and hammers, brute force that they're talking about, if they do it, it will hurt red states. If they do it, it will hurt maggots first.
My only concern is, we know this.
Yes.
But they are going to, I mean the administration, is going to try to spin it that it's because of Democratic policies.
Yeah, but you can't.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I agree, but I honestly don't know at what point, if you're getting a check or you're getting support through Medicare or Medicaid, they're going to beat their chest so loudly that, as far as Musk and Trump and Ramaswamy and all these idiots are going to go, we did these cuts, right? They're going to really sell that they did it. So there will be no mystery. So there's an article that came out in, I want to say it was originally in the Wall Street Journal or somewhere, but it's in Fortune magazine. Walmart just leveled with Americans. China won't be paying for Trump's tariffs. In all likelihood, you will. Walmart's financial chief, John David Rainey, said tariffs are going to be inflationary. There is no disputing that. And this goes again. Who gets affected? Who gets affected? The red states. Who shops at Walmart, ladies and gentlemen? By and large, if you're going to go buy a political party and not just the availability and stuff like that, it's almost like there's a blue-red divide between Target and Walmart. And Walmart has said these costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. 60 to 70% of the things that are in your local Walmart come from China. It might as well be an Alibaba outlet store. And they're about to find out the hard way. We'll be back right after this with Philip Itttner, who I
see him.
I'm going to get. Yep, I see him
right
too.
There, I see him.
Yep, absolutely. We'll be back right after this.
Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Boo. How you doing, Philly?
You want my honest answer, or do you want?
No, I don't need generic.
Fucking deeply depressed. Fucking deeply depressed. What am I supposed to say to these people?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm looking. I just had a meeting with a dear old friend. What am I supposed to tell her?
Yeah.
We're gonna fucking abandon these people. I mean, today's today we mark the Holodomor Remembrance Day.
Right.
Part of the reason why Holodomor happened is because the international community turned a blind eye to what Moscow was doing here, and we're just repeating it. It's exactly what those two old grandmothers on Maidan, pleaded with me about in 2014. because they knew.
Right.
We're just repeating it. We're abandoning these people to the wolves. Shame on us. Shame. Really not in a good mood. Really, really not in a good mood.
Gotcha.
This is why I procrastinated coming back here. I know I did, but
Yeah.
Right.
this just sucks. That fucking piece of shit. The fact that I don't know what to tell these people. They're terrified. They're terrified.
Well, and here's what I would say. Well, we'll talk about it on the air, minus the expletives, but yeah.
You're not going to shift me off my mood though, and I know. Look, there's, we're not giving up.
Right.
That's not an option. But this is not good. This is really, and it's not going to. This will not be the priority for the resistance to Trump. I do not think it will be in the mix, but we're going to have to defend the homeland from what he plans on doing. And foreign policy oftentimes doesn't come first for Americans. I mean, it's just historically the case. And I think a lot of bad things are going to happen here before it gets on Americans' radar. Because again, they're going to be very busy. We're going to be very busy as Americans defending our own democracy, much less defending a democracy that's thousands of miles away, even though we promised them. And even though what happens here will have ramifications back in home. So it's there are things that can be done. The landmines were a good idea. I don't think Trump's going to be able to walk back, letting them shoot ATACMS or. The Brits are now shooting storm shadows deep into Russian territory. That's something we should have done months ago, but at least better late than never. But,
back in 15.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, they're losing territory badly in the Donbass. I think there's going to be a really bad turn of events there soon. Kursk, they're kind of holding on, but this is just it's grim. It's grim here.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Megaworldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn pus-faced little stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Well, welcome to the show. Joining us right now is Philip Itttner. And Philip, are you in Lviv now, or where are you?
I mean, I crossed the border back into Ukraine. Yeah, I'm in Lviv now. I'll be here for a day or two, and then I'll head onwards to Kiev.
Gotcha. And we were talking in a very expletive-friendly way during the break about the current situation and how I guess demoralizing it has to be for the Ukrainians that Trump is going to be back in, and that he seems to have this as a priority to, as he is always, to acquiesce to whatever the hell Vladimir Putin wants.
Not to mention his vice president.
Right. Right.
The entire administration is far more preferential to Putin than they are to people fighting for their democracy and allies and people that we made promises to. I mean, we are speaking today on a day of remembrance in Ukraine. Every fourth Saturday in November, they mark the day as the remembrance of the Holodomor. And for those who don't know what the Holodomor was, it was a man-made, purposeful famine that killed millions of Ukrainians under Stalin in the 30s. And part of the reason why Stalin was able to get away with killing millions of Ukrainians by starvation was because the world turned a blind eye to what was happening. It was only because of a select few very resilient journalists, in particular a Welsh journalist for, I think it was the Times of London, who were able to bring the reality to the world. And the world still didn't really do anything about it.
Right.
And I feel a repeat of that happening. I really do. I guess I'm back in Lviv, after after a better part of a month being away. Mm-hmm. And I as we were talking in the break before, I don't know how to look these people in the eye. I don't. Mm-hmm. This is so distressing. And they know, and they're terrified, and they're hanging on by, they're holding on to hope. My friend who was walked back to the hotel with me before she went home, she said, we're hanging on to our hope by our very last string. They're terrified. They're mm-hmm. absolutely terrified that they're going to be thrown to the wolves yet again. I mean, the whole reason why I'm here, Hal, and we've spoken about this, but is because when I was on Maidan, there were two old women in their 70s, at least, who approached me on the square in 2014 when all of it was going down, when Ukraine was really, really forging its own path away from Moscow. And these two old women approached me, and because they knew the history of their country. The history of their country is because Moscow is such a threat and such a power, and people turning a blind eye to the suffering of the Ukrainian people. They begged me not to let it happen again in darkness, and that's why I'm here. And I know it's not my fault. I know I'm not responsible for the electorate. I know I'm not responsible for Trump's foreign policy. I know all of these things. But I also don't know how I can look them in the eye. I don't. It is heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. As we look at this idea that they've got a runaway mandate, that they're going to be allowed to, do whatever the hell they want or whatever, and as that myth starts to fall to the reality of a more paralyzed government on our side than this just kind of idea that Trump's just going to be able to write his own ticket and do whatever, is that there are certain areas where I was talking in the first hour about things they can't do, versus the area where, they can do some real damage just by freezing in place. And obviously, Trump said he could get rid of, he ran as Santa Claus, let's be honest, to everybody. He promised everybody everything in a big bow, and it would all be, beautiful, comfortable, gigantic, special, and well lubricated.
You'll never be afraid again. You'll never be unhappy again. It's going to be butterflies and ponies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the problem with doing that is that we don't. I think we find a frustration on our side that his people don't hold him to that standard. And in the first go around, they had the excuse of, quote, Russia, and this, the idea that he had done these things, so he was being impeached for stuff that he legitimately tried to do. And these, I think a lot of people use that as an excuse as to why he failed to do certain things or why he didn't live up to his promises. But they were able to blame the Democrats in this situation. Now that we're in this House and Senate situation, the senators that are for the support of Ukraine, which outnumber the ones that are against it, and the House members who are for Ukraine, which outnumber the ones who are against it, have to play ball with these bizarre hardliners who, all reek of being back financed by Russia, the Ron Johnsons of the world, the Chip Roys of the world, and that. There is a very real feeling sinking in amongst, I think, Senate Republicans especially, which is why they just... Oh, we lost Johnny for a second. There he is. That because they just asked, for example, senators have asked for Tulsi Gabbard's FBI file for for the confirmation part of it, because a lot of them are, ultimately. Did Trump have people that were Russia sympathetic around him? Absolutely. Did they turn out to be, in many ways, cooperatives, in the case of Carter Page or Papadopoulos or some of these other people who were like basically couriers. Yeah. But the people that he had around him the first time, at least in the beginning, were not Russian sympathizers per se. And since this didn't pop off, and I mean, they were willing to let stuff go because they didn't really see, the piece of Georgia or the piece of Ukraine that Russia had taken as materially important. Like that's just a we'll get to that one day almost. They didn't take it seriously. Yeah. But now that a war is in its 1000th day, what are we, 1001?
1001 or 2, yeah.
Yeah. This is a different situation where they're having to deal with the reality of this. He's been talking about the fantasy of supporting or not supporting NATO, supporting or not supporting Ukraine this entire time. And even when he was talking to Zelensky about the javelins, when he was using them to manipulate that, this is well before Putin lost 720,000 men in a war zone that is going on. And this is an ongoing concern. This is not something that they could go, well, we'll put a pin in that for later. Any more than the conflict in Israel is in that kind of situation. Now, I'm sure they will try to busy themselves with deportation talk and all this other stuff. But once that starts falling apart, what's the next thing that they're going to talk about? How do we where's that 24-hour end of the war that everybody's happy and everybody goes home and the killing just stops? Well, it's not going to. It simply is not. There's just no way that he just calls an end to it and Putin goes, okay, no harm, no foul. We'll just stay where we are. And Ukraine says, no, you can't just stay where you are. Get out. And then it all starts over again. It didn't end 24 hours after the election. It's not going to end 24 hours after he's in office. And the funds that the Biden administration have allocated will continue well into next year. And France just said, no red lines for Ukraine at all. Jean-Noël Barrot.
And the Brits have got things they're talking about when it comes to like seizing $350 billion of Russian oligarch money, and in so doing, use that to fund. Look, there are things that can be done.
Right.
My primary concerns are twofold. One, what he is legally able to do and what he does, as we have seen in the past. This is a guy who breaks rules and lives by the tenet of better to, ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
So he might, and I'm not saying he will. I like to be an optimist, that, but I'm also not someone who's going to put on rose-colored glasses. This is going to be tough.
Yeah,
this is going to be really, really tough, and he may pull back the support that Biden has allocated, or he may do other things, and then just say, "Well, take me to court," or try and stop me, sort of thing. That is a concern of mine. Now, hopefully, that won't happen.
Right.
But secondly, my other main concern is that we're going to have a lot of work to do domestically to defend ourselves against his plans. And I fear that we will have our hands full internally within the United States, and Ukraine and the war effort here will be not forgotten, but will become secondary. You really got to dedicate yourself and be concentrated on this war effort if you're to win, which we need to really, in the words of General Ben Hodges, we need to start saying we want Ukraine to win, have victory. And I don't know if we can. I don't know if there's space for those two things. Those are my concerns. I am not a doom spreader. Don't misunderstand me. But I am deeply, deeply concerned about the suffering that these people are going to go through. We already had 7 months last year where, because of Speaker Johnson, we withheld aid to this country. Now, in less than 2 months, or in approximately 2 months, we will have a guy who is clearly got some issues with Vladimir Putin.
Agreed.
And feels no love for or need to support Ukraine. And I'm worried about these people.
Yeah.
I'm really, really worried about them.
I agree. I think the issue that he is up against, and it is a very real one, is that the Ukrainians are not just going to give up the fight because he wags a finger at them, and he will have to be tougher on Vladimir Putin than he wants to be to bring this thing to a close, because the Ukrainians won't back down without it, and that's the issue he's going to run into. And most of these, I just honestly, he does not have the support, that we're talking about from the entire Senate or the House. Even he's the loud caucus that was fighting, again, uphill against the rest of the Congress and the rest of the Senate. Now they're the dog that caught the car in theory, but they also just, to pass legislation of any sort, there's going to be like Ukraine funding and a bunch of stuff that Trump wants to get passed, and he's going to have a real hard time.
Yeah. He can't. You're right, Hal. There is a point to this where he can also not be the president that is in the Oval while massacres are happening in Ukraine and the whole world watches it. That won't be acceptable to him either. But that's still going to be such a painful experience for the people of this nation.
Oh, I agree.
We made promises, and we're letting them down. And I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's not as easy as he's just going to go, well, Zelensky's not playing ball, so we're going to just walk away. The West is not just going to walk away. They can't.
Right. Yeah. And again,
it has the potential of being awful. The Russians have no compunction against using really awful, brutal techniques in this country, and they don't mind doing some awful things. Are we really going to just walk away and watch from afar? Will the American people let that happen? Will his ego let that happen? I don't know, but I do know there's a lot of pain that's about to happen here.
Exactly. Let's take a break. We'll come back. Already. Yeah, let's take a break. We'll come back with more with Philip Itttner. He's got a podcast / talk show called On the Edge. I guess, are you going to try for a new episode this Sunday, or
I don't know. I'm trying. There's a specific person who I want to have as the first person coming back after hiatus, and I'm not sure if I can secure it this week. If not, then it'll be next week. But we're not stopping.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I hate feeling like this, and I don't like being like this. But I also don't. I don't want to. I don't want to stick my head in the sand. Right. So this is rough. This is. I don't. There's another friend I met with today who has his 20-year-old son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that when it comes to like the Afghanistan war, Biden was famously against the surge, and everybody was against him for, they sort of mocked it. And I think Gates was one of those things, like, Biden's always wrong he's on the wrong side of all this stuff. Now, Gates was apparently on the side of not supplying stuff to Ukraine. Anyways, but he was also like, we should have stayed in Afghanistan longer and fought harder and I don't know, made it into the 51st state. I can't quite figure out what the end game was for that idiot. But, he would call out how, Biden was, reticent to go all in on this. Obama ultimately did do it because he was listening to the generals. But, that was a disagreement between Obama and Biden about this stuff. In this particular case, I think some of the reticence by the electorate and the reticence, what they're hearing, and maybe it's a bit of Blinken and other people, trying to, first of all, buying Russia's BS about nukes, which Medvedev walked back. I don't know if you saw that part today. Yeah. But, yeah. So about them like launching nukes. Thank you.
Yeah, we should talk about that on air.
I think that's a Trump conversation.
Talk about that on there. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're clearly saber rattling. They want us to be afraid.
Right.
Anyhow, we should talk about that on there.
Yep.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. So, right now, on a sort of human and material level, there are two big things going on in Russia right now, which is the ruble is crashing and their interest rate is somewhere in the order of 21%. And there's no room to fix that. If your interest rate is at 21% and your money isn't worth anything, that's a terrible place to be. That's where people are using yuan instead of rubles, and that's the kind of stuff we hear about in Venezuela and places like that when they start to fall and they're using U.S. dollars instead of their own local currency. But this is Russia we're talking about, and it's an enormous shift for them, and it's something they can't hide. It's not one of these things where people can dance around and say it's better. And then Medvedev walked back his the sort of Russian nuclear threats in the last couple of days, saying that which is in a reversal. They said we would not want something like this to ever happen, meaning the launching of nukes. There are no madmen in the Russian leadership. Now, on one hand, I don't believe anything he says, and nor do I have any reason to. On the other hand, it sounds like they're talking to their own oligarchs who might topple them if they think they're going to jumpstart a nuclear war and ruin it for everybody. There is no coming back from that. There is no new period of Russia where they make nice with the rest of the world. There is no Chinese partnership when that happens. At that point, there's, total annihilation of millions of people. So there, the absurdity of it is, on its face, it's been that ridiculous for a long time. Again, I've said that Russians use MAD, mutual assured destruction, as an umbrella under which they can get away with anything. They don't actually care about it, and they don't think it'll ever be used. As a matter of fact, I would argue their missiles don't work, that they are crap, that there's a reason one of them blew up in the silo, and the launch mechanisms aren't fully capable.
They're new. Hypersonic Orishnik, I think, is what they're calling it. The multi-headed.
Shot out of the sky.
Yeah, that they hit Dnipro with. I'm in a pretty foul mood. I'm not. This is not the best day of my life. Again, explaining. Having to look these people in the eye is difficult.
Yeah.
But I will tell you something that did make me smile today. And it's this. There's all this talk on Ukrainian social media of everybody get ready to go to, and I've forgotten the name of the hill in Kiev. We have to be ready to go to the hill because our doomsday plan in Kiev is to have a massive orgy. If the nukes are coming.
Sure.
Okay.
If the nukes are coming, there's a certain hill right in the center of Kiev where everybody's supposed to gather and have one last big old orgy.
Right on.
Of course, they're not being serious, but it shows you the resilience of the Ukrainian people.
If you'll recall, that's sort of the ending of Spies Like Us, remember?
That's true. That's right. All going into the tent.
Rocket. Right.
Everything leads back to Spies Like Us.
Everything does, absolutely.
Back to Spies Like Us.
So
even though they are really struggling here, and they're very, very afraid, they're still making jokes like that, which makes me love them all the more. So.
Yes. So the other thing too is, I don't know if anybody wants to guess, but the consumer loan rate. So I'll just tell you outright: the consumer loan rate in Russia is 44%, not 4.4. In the United States, it's somewhere between. It's like 5 to 7, depending on what level of stuff you're going for and the length of the loan and all that kind of stuff. 44%. The loan range at the beginning of November, they ranged from 25 to 38, but by 19th of November, the maximum rate had risen to 44%. In October, Russian banks issued 1.9 million cash loans to individuals totaling $3 billion US. This is 28% less than in September and 43% less than in October. The money supply is drying up and nobody wants it in the first place. They are literally trying to crank up the value of their money. And it's it's absurd. And that anybody could look at Russia and go, there's anything about that country to emulate. Their military prowess, their economic picture, their even their electronic advancements or their consumer goods. Like, what in the ever-loving hell does anybody buy that comes out of that country? It's got an economy the size of Italy, smaller than Italy's. And yet we are all tap dancing around the fact that they basically have, their hand up our president's-elect's backside. Which just
it's the nukes. The nukes. That's really what it boils right down to. And we are scared of their nukes, and nobody wants to play chicken with nuclear war. But having said that, they know that too. That's what this whole thing with their hypersonic missile they launched on, I think it was Thursday, at Dnipro, their multi-headed new hypersonic missile. That's meant to scare us. That's meant to terrify us into. That's the only thing they have going for it. They have no economic power to influence. Their diplomatic power is negligible. I mean, they may have a couple of client states in Africa, and they may be able to maybe give some oil or some missile technology to Pyongyang and get in return more, more cannon fodder. Right. But they got nothing. They got nothing going on. And the fact that, the fact that we seem to be tiptoeing and they're, tap dancing around these guys because of the fear of their nukes only emboldens them. I mean, a bully is only emboldened when you let him intimidate you. We got 2 months left, guys. The Biden administration is, we can all have our criticisms of whatever you want, but now is the time. I mean, the idea of letting, I know people find it controversial, the landmines that they allowed them to do, the fact that they can fire longer range weapons into Russia. That's, all well and good. But I mean, you got 2 months. Send everything. It's it's the Gary Oldman moment in Leon Professional. Send everything. What do you mean? Everything. Bradleys. We got tons of Bradleys sitting out in the Nevada desert. Send them. The Ukrainians love them. Well, do it and ask forgiveness later.
And also, here's the thing. Here's the thing Biden, exactly. Here's the thing Biden can do all the way up to the last thing, for those at home who haven't been listening to my regular live stream on, for the last little bit, the last thing Trump did, the last official act he signed, besides pardons, was to allow Venezuelan immigrants, undocumented Venezuelan immigrants, to get deferred enforcement deportation for a year and a half. He did it the last day, on the 19th, the day before he left office, so that all the Venezuelans in the country who were there and who entered, because you can't really tell when they got there, in the next year and a half would get to stay, and then they get their actions deferred, their deportation deferred, and they would go to the back of the line of everybody else, which was already backed up. So they could stay in effectively the entirety of the Biden administration. They were hoping something would happen. They were hoping something would unfold. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to tell you what I found to be a surprising piece of news. I don't know if it's a ray of hope or if just this points to Trump's brain is so spongy and Biden is aware of this, that it affected policy. I'll tell you when we come back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Philip Itttner is with us. Follow him on Blue Sky and others. 1L and Philip, 2 T's and Itttner. We'll be back. So
I haven't fully left Twitter yet, but yeah, I am on Blue Sky and Threads, baby.
I deactivated my account today, and we are no longer broadcasting on there anymore either. So done.
I had a conversation with Malcolm about this, and Malcolm's tactic is that there's a call to arms, and we all leave at once, and that'll have a greater impact. I don't necessarily agree.
I don't think you can coordinate it. It is. I agree. I think that would be neat if there was a day, and I set a date for everybody, like by Thanksgiving, out by Thanksgiving, and so that they really notice like their Black Friday is a real Black Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chicago. I'm
down with that.
But yeah, exit strategy out by Thanksgiving, and I'm done. And
I get nothing from it anymore. I really don't. There's no upside to it.
Just the interaction puts money in his pocket and gives the illusion that it's a functioning site. Turn it into a
House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, there is relatively breaking news coming out of a quote from the Republican Club president Boris Pincus, who said that Trump supported Biden's decision to grant Ukraine permission to strike deep into Russia. He says, I have information that during their meeting, Biden shared and discussed his plan with Trump, after which he received a positive response. He told Trump he's going to allow them to fire into Russia, and Trump was okay with it. There may be an element we're walking into where the worm has turned, and you know how they're always against everything until it makes them look good, or he loves to cut ribbons on projects that somebody else funded. Republicans love showing up at infrastructure projects and cutting that ribbon, man, even though they voted against it. There's a lot of similarity, and in who's going to get bounced through Senate confirmation, including, I believe, Tulsi Gabbard. And he just put Rick Grinnell in charge of like liaison to the Ukrainian conflict or something. There's no official role, but that's what he's doing. Mm-hmm. That means he's not going to be CIA head. He's giving them all these like dumb roles to broom them out, giving them a spot, but sideline almost advisor roles, right? Where he can pay them a fee and they get a nice government pension, but they don't actually have any real impact. But according to people with knowledge of the meeting, Biden in their private meeting said specifically, I'm going to give them the ability to fire into Russia, and Trump was okay with it. Now, could it be that his spongy, doughy, brain that is deflating, as Eddie Izzard would say, like a flan in a cupboard? Yeah, it's possible. But it doesn't matter. If he said okay, he's one of those guys whose ego won't even let him walk back stuff he said as a mistake. So that we very well may be in a situation where that happens. And
again, he will not want to be in the president as there's and I use this term cautiously, but with purposeful intent, and I mean it. Does he want to be the president who sits by and watches a genocide in Ukraine?
Right.
Because we that's what we're. I mean, I'm trying to be cautious. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but the Ukrainian people will not bend the knee to Moscow again.
Right.
Ever. They're not. Now they might be forced into a negotiation where they have to abandon the 4 provinces, the oblasts, that Moscow falsely claims there was a proper referendum and they voted to move and join the Russian Federation. But will he be able to sit there with his ego and watch the scale of death and destruction in Ukraine go through the roof because we've withdrawn our support at his so yes, I could absolutely see it, but I could see a scenario where that plays out that way, where you play on his own ego and his own. He doesn't want to be that president. He doesn't want to go down in history as that president.
That's why Biden shook his hand. It's why world leaders who think he's an idiot and a scumbag are the ones that hug him the tightest. I mean, there's a certain point of, keep your friends close and your enemies closer that makes sense in this situation. Yeah. But he is so malleable and he's so predictable. Why not use that as a tool instead of just going, I'm going to be, so staunch in the presentation of my ethics that I will not be seen being nice to this dude, even though that's the one thing he falls for every time. If you congratulate him, he basically bursts into tears and he can't handle it. So I say to those around him, and I will give everybody a pass who's like, yeah, Mr. President, good to have you here. Yank on his hand like he does when he's meeting people and all that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, you're brilliant, boss. Fantastic. Because that's what's going to be required to rein this dude in, because that's what everybody else around him, from J.D. Vance to Ramaswamy and Musk, that's what they're all doing to control him. They're all just, like applauding him like a bunch of North Korean generals every time he walks in the room, and it works like a charm. We all know they don't believe it. We all know they haven't changed their morals about it, but that's how you manipulate this guy. And as much as I don't like Joe and Mika going down to Mar-a-Lago, I can see the other side of the game in that. I can see how that works and how nobody else would go, right? And the guy's going to be president. So if you've got leverage and you know that the leverage against him is so cheap, because all you got to do is go, yeah, well done. Meanwhile, you file lawsuits and you do all the other stuff that you're going to do. You just got to, when you're near him, pat him on the back. It's so weird. So, I think it's crucial, okay? I think it's crucial. I think in this situation it works.
I get that. I truly do. However, one of my multitude of concerns is that there is going to come a time when he is going to pick up the phone and he is going to call Zelensky and he's going to try and tell Zelensky to do something that he will not, either one, he doesn't want to do, or in addition, or, as a plus, he can't do, because he would be ousted. And that is namely to give up all that territory and to, set up some bizarre kind of, DMZ or whatever it is that Trump is going to try and push on Zelensky. He doesn't understand Zelensky at all. He doesn't understand the man's character. He doesn't, because he doesn't understand that character in human beings. Right. It's lacking in him. And Zelensky will say no. And then my fear is the interim between Zelensky saying no, Trump saying, well, this is a guy I can't work with because he doesn't bend the knee, and that period where we start to see the images of lots of Ukrainians suffering and Ukrainian cities being bombed in extensive measure because we're not giving air defense anymore. That then will shame him. If shame is the right word, that will paint him into a corner where he will have to, because the American people, look, the West, not just the American people, are not going to like what is about to happen here if the Americans pull their support from this country. It will be, it'll be a shonda. It'll be a great shonda, to use our Hebrew friends' word. It will be a shame. It will be a disgrace that we will have given promises and we had made assurances. Give up your nukes. Give up your nukes. We'll take care of you. And then during this full-scale invasion, we're going to support you. We're going to support you. Then Trump gets his back up because Zelensky resists his, pressure. And then we start to see real suffering. Not that we haven't seen suffering here heretofore, but an increase in that then will force him back to a place where he'll have because he's not going to want to be the president in the Oval when really bad stuff starts coming down the pipeline here.
They're not going to back down. They're not going to back down and acquiesce and allow Russia to salami slice their way into their country, because who's be the next. Right. It makes it, and the idea that here's his biggest issue is that because he ran as Santa Claus and he ran on this idea that it would be so easy and so quick and we could just do it, and there's stupid people in there. This again, what I call the stroke of the pen fallacy, that they could just do it with a stroke of a pen. They just won't do it because they're either dumb or evil. That's the only two options that are available in this circumstance. And by making that case and by selling it that way, if he doesn't solve it immediately, what's his fallback? I mean, I'm sure people will go, well, nobody will care and they'll just move on. Well, they can't. And secondly, this is his last term in office, and everybody's like, he's going to overstay and he'll rescind the thing that I'm like, oh, then Obama will run again and trounce him. It's silly. But he's not going to do it. He's not going to pull a Xi Jinping, and he's not going to try because his own Republican Party would eat him alive in that regard. I don't. There's no way.
And he's falling apart. The man is falling apart.
Yes,
in
exactly.
4 years' time. And also, let's. I am not a doom spreader. I don't put on rose-colored glasses either. There's a happy medium in that 2 years. We got 2 years, and the midterms are going to be a massive upheaval. This guy is going to be such a disaster.
Yeah,
and he is going to screw the pooch so badly that in 2 years' time, I'd be willing to put money he loses the House and the Senate. And then ultimately, and he'll be too old to go for whatever kind of third term. And said that you're right. Yeah. That's not even something we should be discussing. But this is going to be a train wreck. And if the Ukrainians can hold on for 2 more years, and it's little solace to the people who will suffer in those 2 years, because again, I don't think this is going to play out well because of all of these factors that I already outlined. But if they can hold on for 2 years, he's going to lose the House and the Senate. I mean, this is going to be
it's going to be bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, we have a situation where if he makes it, he's going to be our oldest president, and he was the oldest candidate for president after Biden dropped out, and he's in terrible shape, and it is not going to change. Now, I personally believe that if he has an ischemic stroke or something, God forbid, and I'm not wishing this on anybody, but if he becomes relatively incapacitated, the Republicans will have a choice. They can either go with J.D. Vance and totally sink their options for the next, go around and all this stuff. There will not be this giant, he's the magic guy who's now the obvious heir to MAGA, right? They'll either... It'll crash because of that, or they'll have to roll him around like Admiral Pike in Star Trek, drooling out the side of his mouth and just moving his lips and going,
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah. So, and that was, all the things they've said about Biden are true about Trump. And as far as his mental incapacity and all this other stuff. And that's why I was like, just Biden saying, just simply floating the idea that, like just saying, I'm going to allow them to use long range missiles in there. And the fact that Trump apparently agreed with the approach either speaks to it's all been a show. And we know he's a classical liar. And he's been around he's been that way for a long time. Or he's so jelly-headed, he just says yes to whatever seems reasonable so he could just get on with golfing. Yeah, there is no other there. Let's take a break, and we come back. I'm certain we have questions for Phil from the chat room. Let's grab those on the other side of this for the final segment. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. I'm in Nerd Halen. We got a show tonight. We're playing F1, which means we're playing like 11 to 2 in the morning because that's when F1 runs. So, yeah, we played till 11 last night. Good times. Good times. Thanks to everybody who came out. We'll see you again. All right, we'll be back right after this. Yeah, that was a late night last night. My throat's a little worse for wear, and then after the show, I gotta not talk until the show tonight.
lovely ailments. I threw my back out. I stayed an extra day in Krakow because I couldn't get out of bed on Friday.
No. Yikes.
I have no idea what I did, but
usually it's the feeling back issues are not feeling supported, so I completely support you.
I am happy, and you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Yay! Who doesn't love us? Who doesn't love strumming Makuchi?
Yes.
Wow. Why does it sound dirty when you say it?
It does. Sounds dirty when anybody says it. I don't know if you had a chance, but Kate has on her YouTube channel, she now paints stuff that people have left in alleyways and that kind of stuff, like pieces of wood or old tables and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's pretty great. So people should give her a follow. And by the way, this is my happy ending. I built a robot hand this week, and this is it. This is it doing the metal horns on screen. Okay. Just letting you know. And it's got a touch sensor. It'll eventually have one for each finger, and then it's got LiDAR and a camera. I'm an insane person. I get it. Yeah. So there you go.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm working on another one too. It's a dog. So she's a dog. Okay. All right. Let's grab the questions, Johnny.
I've got one from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Philip if German politics will change in a direction to help Ukraine?
This is another problem. The rise of the right throughout Europe. And, Scholz, Chancellor Scholz has not been great when it comes to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. He really hasn't. There's so many criticisms of him. But if those German right-wing parties come to power, they've already made overtures about, we want to restore good relations with Moscow. Right. And it's like, well, that's you can't restore good relations with Moscow after all this.
It's the Joe Manchin conundrum. You lose Joe Manchin, who goes with you 89% of the time, to somebody who is against you 100% of the time.
Was it Joe from 3D Tech? What is it? What's his handle?
Ed's 3D Tech.
Ed's 3D Tech. Ed, go take a look at the episode of On the Edge that I did with Jessica Berlin, where we talk about the rise of the right and in particular in Germany. And she's a German American who I interviewed, who was on the show about 2 months ago, and it's still relevant. And she explains it far better than I could.
Gotcha. Cool. Let's grab another one, Johnny.
I've got another question here from Lisa Mia Moore. Can you please ask Hal and Phil if they think this is going to be the worst year of Trump's life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
I do too.
Again, if nothing is worse for somebody like that than getting everything they want and still being miserable. And I think
maybe now I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but only just. His capacity for joy is almost negligible. Mm-hmm. He's a miserable human being. He's been. Right. I mean, you listen to Mary Trump. Who, is, she's got an agenda and all sorts of other stuff, but she does know him about as well as anybody on this planet. And it's a problem. Fred Trump was a horrible, horrible human being. And he did, irreparable damage to his children. His capacity for joy, I don't think. So, he's going to get everything he ever wanted, and he's still going to be unhappy. And it is a matter of the dog who caught the car. What do we do with it now? oh yeah, their Project 2025 ideas. They can try, but no, they're going to.
They will have an impact.
This is going to be.
They will. Here's the thing. Agreed. They will do some damage. Don't get me wrong. And it will be required of us, and it will be required of our state reps and our governors and the like to make up for the slack during this time. They don't have anywhere near the power they think they do, and they're going to be mad and blame the deep state when it doesn't work, when in reality it's simply because of their own ignorance and incapacity. They don't know how stuff works, and the reason we put systems in place to make sure some of this stuff stays was confounding. Now, again, Trump has this idea that he can commit any crime he wants in his capacity as president, and that he can get away with it because it's, legally he's allowed. Look, if he does something like the whole, like, could you take SEAL Team 6 and murder someone using SEAL Team 6? And that was an official act, so therefore. If it's just to get revenge on your ex-wife or something like that, it still doesn't work. All the court said is you have to be impeached first. That the motive part of it has been removed from the conversation, and the motive must be established by the House and the Senate, mainly the House. The House has to impeach you. At that point, even if the Senate doesn't kick you to the curb, you could be tried in a court of law if you are impeached in this regard. Now, is the House, as it stands, going to do it? No. But if he loses the midterms, which it looks like he will probably do, because if they, go anywhere near the biggest goals they have, they will get out over their skis, because his margin was 1.6%.
Yeah.
So,
and in addition to that, and if I can, absurd. In addition to that, do you think the Democrats are bad at playing the blame game against one another? Democrats play the blame game because of a variety of different, reasons and traits. The Republicans are vicious with one another, and that's out of malice. That's out of real power politics malice.
They hate hate rhinos more than they hate us.
And look, when it starts to go bad, I think you're right. I think there will be some that go deep state, deep state, deep state. I think a lot of them are going to be looking at one another. And I think there's going to be power struggles and power dynamics. It's going to be the White House by way of Dynasty or Dallas. It's cat fights, and this is going to be horrible for them. Mm-hmm. And I do think this is going to be one of the worst years of his life. And his mental health. Well, I lost both my parents to Alzheimer's. The dude is not well.
Yeah.
And that's in public, so
yeah.
Let's see.
Our biggest concern, do we have a situation where his fits of anger that will come as part of this, which he definitely has. He's apparently been flipping out at Mar-a-Lago about quote unquote leaks of stuff that are coming out about who he's going to pick for what. And this is all normal, but he's apparently been in a rage about certain people, being found out who he was planning on nominating for certain positions, getting out before he was ready to say it. Once he's in the White House, is it concerning that he could act as president and his orders must be followed if he's losing his mind? Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a big thing. But again, the odd part is, and this is the part I don't think they factor in, is will they keep the Joe Rogans of the world and the support that they get from them? Now, Alex Jones will be a ride or die, so will Glenn Beck and all these other folks. But this tangential, whatever, the Theo Vaughns of the world aren't going to whatever, a massive, releasing the military into cities, marching down the street with guns, rounding up brown people. That will be a bridge too far for a bunch of these folks. And the issue is, will he try it and find out that way, or will they just kind of find ways around it to pretend they're fulfilling the promise without you really seeing it happen? It's happening everywhere. Is it? Oh, it must be. This is the same story they told about, crime in big cities. You can't walk down the street in New York without being murdered and sexually assaulted and robbed at the same time. And yet he brought all these people to Madison Square Garden. Whatever happened to those people? I suppose there were, what were there, 30,000 funerals the next weekend? What happened? So
and very much like Vladimir Putin, he has made himself the indispensable part of. He will leave a vacuum.
Yeah,
because JD Vance is going to fill his shoes. No. Elon Musk is going to fill his shoes. Nope. There's nobody. MTG is not going to fill his shoes. It's a cult of personality, just like it's a cult of personality with Vladimir Putin. Yeah, you remove that, and there's the whole house of cards come collapsing.
That's right. And so it's got a shelf life on it. And some Republicans, the division that we have to work between the Republicans that are happening right now is the ones that want a future after he's gone back with a regular kind of order Republican Party, caring about what they care about and doing what they do, who are sensible and can be related to, and the other people who are just going to drop out of the system entirely once he's dead, like Jonestown members when Jim Jones died, the survivors of Jonestown, they'll just kind of vanish into it, and you'll see a interview with them every 6 years to check in on what happened to those loonies. Let's grab another question because I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, we've got some people who cannot, and me included, who can't find you on Blue Sky. Do you know your handle?
I'm only on Threads right now. I only just downloaded Blue Sky today, so I'm setting up my account after this. But it will be, either it'll either be Philip Itttner or Itttner Philip, one of the two.
Okay. All right, cool. So we're not crazy that we couldn't find you. And then this is the last question I've got from the chat from Colleen. Has Hal discussed Trump and the transition agreement? Has he signed it, and what if he doesn't?
Say again, sorry? I lost the last part of that.
Has Hal discussed Trump and the transition agreement? Has Trump signed it, and what if he doesn't?
Oh, yeah, no. So it isn't so much the transition agreement. He has a bunch of paperwork he has to file that requires everybody in the transition to swear an oath to the Constitution temporarily so that if they violate the oath, they can go to jail. Because you don't actually, as a member of the incoming administration, you don't actually take an oath to protect and uphold the Constitution and all that stuff until you get into office, until he becomes president. You're part of his cabinet. In the transition, you're still a civilian working on the outside. But if you're going to handle classified stuff, or you're going to have briefings and all that kind of stuff, you have to take an oath to protect the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if you take that oath and you violate that oath, you can go to prison. And along with that, transition paperwork is that they take this oath, that they show up and do it, and that there is a background check on them. And he's avoiding that with certain people. But the issue he has is that there's nobody new. We've been through this before. Tulsi Gabbard has an FBI file. Even Hegseth, I don't see him becoming the DOD head, I don't see that happening because the SecDef, right? Because, for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which is that he's embarrassed. He's pulling a Gates right now, and he's totally unqualified at the same time, and he's a drunk.
And wasn't he dishonorably discharged from the military because of his tattoos?
Oh, very well may have. I don't know. The Crusader tattoos that he has are not directly exclusionary, and thanks to the Iraq War, the rules on that got really lightened, unless somebody can fill me in on that part of it. But either way, the fact that you're going to have this drunken sex pest from Fox News running the Department of Defense is just embarrassing.
Who does not believe in washing his hands.
Right, who doesn't believe in germs. Right.
So if I can't see them, they're not real.
Right, which is really useful in somebody fighting a military battle where bioweapons might be a part of it.
I'm a man of faith.
Right. So, anyways, I want to remind everybody, Johnny Million's got a show. It's Johnny Million on Twitch and on YouTube. And then, of course, On the Edge is Philip Ittner's show. You can check it out on Sundays. They have new episodes. It'll either be this week or the week after, depending. We will be doing a show next weekend, even though it's Thanksgiving weekend, just letting everybody know. I will be here, just so you have a heads up. But until that time, take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. Be safe, Phil, when you're in your travels, and we think about you all the time. And big hug from everybody here in Sparks World. Take care, folks. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
The chat sends you all kinds of love, Phil.
Thank you very much, guys. You know, it's not good,
what you're doing.
But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Can't give up. Can't give up.
Right.
All right, folks. I'm going to go get something to eat. Wednesday, Hal?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Wednesday morning.
See you then.
We'll be
Take care, Johnny.
See you, Phil. Hang in there, buddy.
All right, pal.
Cheers.
See you later.
See you
Keep checking
later.
your mail, Hal.
I will. Absolutely. All right. See you later, Johnny. Love you. And thank you guys so much for being here. I want to say hi to the chat room because you guys were so patient through all of that. Anyways, it's I don't want you to think you're not seeing. I literally look right at what you're writing in here because you're in the screen that my camera goes through. So hello. And now I'm going to go not talk until 9 o'clock tonight because I've got a show at 10 p.m. and I've got to sing my butt off 3 sets at the Shag Room at the Virgin Hotel and Casino for F1, and I can already feel my throat being hot. So appreciate you guys and thank you so much. And like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. Break a lung. Thank you. I actually think that works on some level. My only worry is that I'll break a kidney and
the kidney has a very special place in the heart.
Ah, I see. Gotcha. Okay. I wasn't sure about that. Thanks again to Hal Vickery and M. West and Jerry. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Tamal622. Who else am I missing? Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, Hal Vickery. Oh, Matt, thank you for getting some merch. That's awesome. I mean, it's Christmas time. I'm going to set up a Black Friday. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll set up a Black Friday code or something like that. That's smart. I've never done that before. See, we're already fixing things.